Thank you. Super excited to be here with everyone. I know it's been a long hackathon. I hope everyone's been productive and enjoying it. I'm going to pop some slides up here because in the process of kind of preparing for this, I got to go through all of my old pictures of college, which aren't really that old, and find pictures of my co-founder and I, who I met at SFAX. So we'll start here. And I have to ask the question, can everyone see my screen? Yes, I'm seeing some nods. Okay, cool. And we'll keep this really short. It's not going to be an hour long. It's going to be maybe 15 minutes max, and then we'll do a lot of Q&A. And the Q&A is going to be great because I think it's more interesting to have discussions than be talked to and lectured at. So from SF State to startup. So I'm Paul, and I think hopefully this works. It all started at SFAX. It's funny, I had to go into the Snapchat memories to find this actually. The one with the heart around it is my co-founder, Lan, who had since dyed his hair blonde. There was a moment, and I took this picture on Snapchat Spectacles in a SFX meeting in 2016. So it's kind of interesting to see, like, you know, you start sitting across the table from someone I had no clue that I would start a company with to then raising a pretty nice pre-seed round in April of this year. So interesting thing to remember is that you never know the people you're working with at SFX and school, how they'll be important in your life later on. I can tell you for a fact, when I met Lan, I had no clue that we'd be doing this, and it's kind of fun to see. So we're going to go through a couple of things. The theme for this is actually like how to get the most out of the experience of being in school. I think it's important to be thoughtful about this because a lot of times people, or I kind of just showed up to college and said, what do I do? And just went through the process. And then I know a lot of people do the same thing and they weren't really thoughtful about it. And it's important to be thoughtful about it. It's a picture from SFX, the first one. So this is what it would have been like this year, I'm sure. You know, fill up the annex with a bunch of chairs and desks. Super fun. So there's a little bit about me in the bio. This was at one of the first SFX giving a talk. I was giving the same thing Alicia did, where you tell everyone about like, okay, make sure you show up to the keynote at this time, etc. And it was super fun. So I graduated from SF State in 2017 doing computer science. I did 3 years at Twilio, a cloud communications company. We make APIs to send text messages. And then I founded this company called Stream Club, which we do software for live streaming, like in-browser live streaming. I'll talk about that more later. I think this is like this is what's on the LinkedIn, but there's a lot of like bios that aren't on the LinkedIn. So I think that's actually more interesting. I did a lot of other odd jobs before I did these kind of tech jobs. I was like a food runner. I dropped a lot of plates. I was really bad at that. I was a student assistant at SF State for like a year and a half doing I was fixing Ethernet ports in the classrooms. And I had this passion for IT. I actually always thought I was going to be an IT person. I never thought that I was going to be a software engineer. I thought like, okay, I have to code to be good at IT. So then I did an internship at a local IT company that I found off of Reddit. I actually just DM'd someone that was on Reddit, like, hey, this company seems cool. It's in my hometown. Can I come work for you guys? And they're like, yeah, okay. Can you do minimum wage? I was like, sure. And then I was an intern. That was my first internship I ever had. I think a lot of people when they look for internships in school, they're like, oh, I got to get an internship at Google. I have to intern at Apple or like Boeing. You know, you don't have to start at these really incredible companies. You can really start locally or not even in the same career field you want to do. Mine was IT at TechMD. I stayed there for 3 years. It's a really great experience. Okay, so before college, I think this is a really important thing. I knew there's some high school students in here. Like, what do you do before you go to college? I think it's important to think ambitiously about your vision, right? Like, what do you see yourself doing? Why are you even going to school? Because you don't have to, right? College is a choice. A lot of people do it out of obligation, and I think it's great. I think it's a good experience, but what's the point? For me, I wanted to go to college because I wanted to learn deeply about computers. I was always fascinated by them. Like I said, IT was my thing I was really into. I got my first computer in early high school, and I was really excited because I'd break it all the time and I have to figure out how to fix it so my parents get mad. So I got really good at that. I learned how to code a little bit so that I could fix the bugs that I would find in the software that I was trying to use. And computer science in college made a lot of sense for me. It doesn't always make sense for a lot of people, and you don't always have to go to school to get the education. So, you know, for me, it was like, okay, I'll go to school, learn a lot about computers, and I'll go do something with that, either in IT programming. I always had this idea that I wanted to be a CTO for some reason. I think it just sounded like a really cool title, and the business side of it wasn't very interesting to me, but the computer side was really cool. So think initially. This is a project I did in 660, CSC 660 SF State with my team. This guy works at Apple. This guy, I think he works at another tech company. This guy founded the company. I don't know what they're up to. I gotta catch up with them, but it's been a while. Okay, this is a view from Thornton Hall at SF State looking south or west, really cool. So before college, try things out, get a sense for what you like. What I think was important was like, I knew I liked programming, or like I didn't hate it before college, before I chose computer science. And I think if you're still in high school, which I know there's a couple people who might be in high school here, or even if you're not and you're early on, give things a test before you commit to them for 4 years. You know, like if you really love design, maybe try designing some stuff, maybe think about design, read a book about design. I think that's really important because you don't want to go do this for 4 years and realize you hate it. And I think this is actually happening a lot more with computer science and programming in college, where people are doing it for the money. And that's just like really not fun long-term. It doesn't work out really well. I know some programmers who've kind of gone to software and done really well because they love, you know, the high salaries, but they're really miserable. And I don't know, life doesn't seem worth living if it's you're miserable about it all the time. So highly encourage you to try programming and at least get a sense for what's interesting before you commit to this. Cool, that's before college. Maybe not as relevant. Had to throw it out there. Because now during college, this is the most important part, because most of the people here are in college, which is great. You get out what you put in. This is especially true at SF State, but I think it's true everywhere. If you're not putting your full self into the experience, you're not going to get a lot out of it. If you just show up for class, do your homework, and leave, there's not a lot of value. You won't make these relationships with these people that could potentially be your co-founder later on. This is a picture from like an alumni panel we put on during school. And I think it's great because people here at SF Hacks, you're putting in the extra step. You're doing this weekend hackathon. You're showing up to actually build something outside of your time. It's not a required thing at all. And that's great. Do as much of that as possible, because it's rare that you have 4 years that are really free form in life to kind of opt into whatever you want. Like the minimum set of requirements for college is go to school and pass your classes and probably work to pay for the school and your housing and stuff. But beyond that, you really get to do whatever you want. And it's possible to do very little. And I'd encourage you to do the opposite of that, but actually to lean in as much as you can into the college experience and extracurriculars. Secondly, you know, the relationships you make are worth as much as a degree. This is from another panel. Going to stuff like this, going to SF Hacks, going to the workshops, talking with your hackathon team, talking with your classmates. I know it's really hard during COVID, and it's worth saying, like, this is like you're playing on hard mode, and I'm really proud, and I encourage you, like, if you're doing anything right now, it's amazing, because I think it's really hard. But once COVID is over, you know, just spending time with people, you don't know how these people are going to be important in your life. I think with my co-founder, Lan, you know, we were able to talk, and we always knew that we worked really well together when we were planning SF Hacks. We're like, oh man, it's really easy to like plan this really complicated event with this person because we vibe and we have similar complementary working habits. And I was like, oh, interesting. Put that in the back of my head, didn't think about it for a really long time. And then it became relevant to me. So it's just, you kind of get to seed all these relationships and let them grow for a really long time when you start them in school. So I highly recommend like doing that and trying to like make friends. And all the organizers here, all the people doing hackathons, be friends with your teammates, keep an eye on them, Facebook friends, whatever, Snapchat friends, whatever's big these days. The way that you keep in touch with these people is going to be really important long-term. Build experience. This is really important too. You know, we're in school, we're learning in the classroom, but like building real experience is really important too. So earlier I said, you know, hey, maybe take an internship that doesn't seem super relevant, but building any kind of work experience is going to be super important to you. So if you can, you don't have to intern at like a great company, but try and get some sort of internship, try and volunteer somehow, do something that helps you push you towards your career after college, whatever that may be. And it's going to be supplementary to your degree, right? You take your classes, and that's certainly one thing that's really important. But the internships you do, the outside work, the conferences you go to, the talks you watch, that experience compounds. And it's really, really valuable for you and for employers in the future to say, okay, what did Paul do in college? Paul went to class, great. Oh, but Paul also went to SF Hacks and built a project. He built a side project that he launched on the App Store and it got 10 downloads, whatever, but he did something. He took an internship or he volunteered and contributed to open source. There's a lot of like things you can do to build experience that aren't just going to class. And it really just makes your efforts in college much more worthwhile. Okay, so this is during college. Let's go. Sorry, I gotta make sure on this thing too. Great. College. Grad pick, CS class, the people we could find. It's always hard to find people in in-person graduation. What's really important is manager and team is much more important than company when you're selecting where to go after college. I had an offer from Amazon and an offer from Twilio. And at Amazon, I would have been really cool. I didn't know what team I'd work for and what manager I'd have. It was they go through this thing called assignment, they give you the offer, you accept it, and then they assign you to a team, which is less than ideal because you don't know who you're going to be working for the next, how many years. Twilio, I got to know my manager, I got to know the team. His name was Jason Wells. The team was Identity. We were building the API to authenticate every Twilio request, and my part of it was the login page. And he was like a really great mentor to me in the time I knew him, and when I interned with him. And I was able to say that this person was going to stand up for me and help me grow. And your manager and the team you work with, the people I worked with on the team, the Identity team, were some of the smartest engineers I've ever worked with my entire life. I could say that confidently. These are the smartest engineers I've worked with. It was like crazy. I just felt like, how am I here? Doing that was so much more valuable than going to a big brand name like Amazon. Twilio back then wasn't really known. It was 800 people. It was a small, just recently went public company. But the team was so important and helped me get to where I am now. So if there's maybe one big thing for the after college part that you can take away, try and find the manager that you really respect and the team that you're really excited about in terms of the people you work with. It'll just make the experience much better. You'll get more out of it. Along that line, and this is SF Hacks, so we had a Snapchat filter. That was cool. Personal growth is greater than bank account. And I probably should put bank account growth. This one has a huge caveat of privilege, and it's important for me to call out that I am very privileged and lucky based on my gender, the color of my skin, my background, education. And it's worth being thankful for that I'm able to optimize for personal growth. And if you have that privilege where you can make a choice, take a financial risk to go for personal growth, I highly recommend it. There will be times when you can take a high-paying job that doesn't necessarily teach you much. That's a very short-term view, to take the high-paying job that doesn't teach you much. It may be high-paying, but when you look at the long-term, the more that you can grow and become a better version of yourself, that increases your value that you'll create to somebody else. This type of long-term thinking is really, really important. And there's a kind of an interesting analogy that is like great investors, investors in the stock market, they trade for the long term. They make 10 to 15-year trades. And historically, like Warren Buffett has been a really good investor, right? He's made really long-term trades. You want to do the same thing with yourself. You want to make decisions that have long-term value, because with careers, it's not like picking a class for the next semester. You're kind of setting up like 5-year chunks of things. I worked at Twilio for 3 years. I'll be doing Stream for 5 years at least, right? You make these decisions that impact, half decades of your life. So it's worth kind of picking the ones that will help you grow the most, because, the bank account will come, especially when you're young and in your 20s. Like I said, this is a privilege you can say. Sometimes you have to take care of your families, and it's worth keeping in mind. But for me, I always try and optimize for personal growth. How can I become a better person by following up on this opportunity, by doing this thing? That's really important. Okay, after college, you got to come back to your school and get involved. There's no argument about this. It's done a lot for you. The community's done a lot for you. You should go back. This is a picture of an alumni gathering that they did for SF State. It's really important because it's how you increase the value of your degree, and it's how you help other people. Let me give an example. So, and this is, like I said, super SF State related, but I think it's important because everyone, here maybe has gone to college or is in college. You graduate from school, the school has a name on it, SF State has a degree, right? And that degree has some value as a brand attached to it. Maybe where famous people went to school or successful people went to school. Like Mark Zuckerberg went to Harvard. Everyone's like, okay, so people go to Harvard or like Mark Zuckerberg. When you go back to the school and you help people, you increase their chance of success. And if they're successful, it helps the reputation of your degree. So it's kind of like the rising tide lifts all boats, right? Like I know that everyone on this SF Hacks team and everyone here is going to be super successful. And I'm just thankful for it because I'll be attached to that via SF State, right? So it's important to go back because you want to help other people like they may have helped you. And it also really opens the door for a lot of people to get involved in the technology scene or our industry in general. So I highly recommend just going back after you're done with this thing, after you graduate and you have your job, and just trying to help out. I think a lot of people forget about that. They kind of graduate and just put us a state in the rear view. Don't do that. Come back. It's really, really valuable. That was a lot of information in 10 to 15 minutes, I think. I want to go ahead and open up to just some Q&A. And I think maybe the best way to do this, I'll go ahead and check the Zoom. The best way to do this probably would be to, how many people do we have in here? Do it through the chat. I guess there's not that many. We could just have people unmute or, wait, that's my Slack. I'll move that over here. Yeah, do people just want to go ahead and unmute if they have any questions? Happy to kind of answer anything about SF State, about hackathons, about tech in general. Yeah, anything, open book.
So how do you know if your startup is going in the right direction?
I think a lot of times it's driven by the metrics that you care about, the KPIs. Like for us, if users are signing up and using the product, and for us, we look at minutes streamed, that's going up, we're going in the right direction. There's also a lot of feel, which is less quantifiable. You can feel when things are going well. Startups are very much a momentum game, and you kind of continuously build momentum. And when things aren't happening fast, it's probably because there's something wrong with the direction that you're going in. Our startup pivoted. Originally, we were doing eventually something like a Eventbrite plus Zoom. It was really kind of cool. And we pivoted into this live streaming technology because we just felt like it wasn't going in the right direction. There were some metrics that were working, but they weren't growing up as fast as we wanted them to. So we went in a different direction. Good question. Thank you. I'm going to read some from the chat. That's cool.
For sure. Yeah.
Mohit asks, how to choose between starting your own startup and building up your skills, learning DSA, preparing for interviews. I don't know what DSA is, but I think I get the sentiment. You should start your own startup after you have gone to work for a company, a professional, software, if it's a technology company, a professional company, if you work for another startup. I think very few people have gotten it right cold with no job experience. People like to think about Zuckerberg because he dropped out, but Bezos worked at a finance firm for several years, almost 5 years, I think, before he started Amazon. And I think that's a much more sustainable way. You get to learn more. You get to see how companies work, how to get a performance review or give a performance review, all these really important things that are great for company building. So definitely go work somewhere first, and then once you get the hang of that, it might be a good time to start thinking about going off on your own. Brenda asked, how would you compare your startup experience to working at a large, medium-sized company? What do I like more? They're both very different. I think working at a large company is really fun because it's just the stuff you do has huge impact. At Twilio, my services that I wrote, they would process something like 1 million requests per minute. Which is crazy. It was a lot of requests, and you had to be very careful. I also was surrounded by people who were really, really smart. When I go to a big company, it's already very established. So there's a lot of very established people who are there. And that's really important to learn from. I wouldn't have access to some of those really smart people on the street or just in my network. So I kind of had to go there first in order to make those connections and be friends with these people who've been writing Java code for longer than I've been alive. Which one do I like more? I love my startup. I love working at a startup. It's very empowering to have control of the direction that our company is moving in. It's also the most challenging thing I've ever done. And I like working hard. I think I work a lot harder on my company than I did at Twilio. Nothing wrong with Twilio. If I worked so hard at Twilio that there just wouldn't be anything for me to do because there's so many people working there. So it's hard to pick which one I like more. I like the startup more right now. So check on me in 6 months. We'll see if that's still true. Quinn Howe, I hope I pronounced that correctly. If you discover that programming is not your thing, how easy is it for a programmer to shift to another career? That's a good question. I think it's actually not too hard. I don't want to say it's super easy because it's certainly not easy, but it's not too hard because programmers are really great at learning to learn and learning how to Google things. And if you can Google things, you can kind of do a lot of stuff. As anyone who's ever like Googled like a WebMD, like a illness thing, like you figure out how to like get the splinter out of your foot by Googling, right? So I would say that if you're a programmer, you don't love it, you have some really helpful skills, which like you're very resourceful. You can figure out how things work. You can think systematically, right? Like you can figure out like, oh, how to do things procedurally. And that can translate to a lot of different places. I think a lot of great programmers also really good analysts. Oh, DSA is data structure and algorithms. Yeah, gotcha. So like data analysts. So if you can write SQL, you can help a lot of people understand their data, and that's very, very valuable. Cool. A lot of good questions. How do you avoid or decrease the risk of starting your own startup? It's a really good question. Ways to de-risk startups, de-risking the idea is probably very good. So talking to a lot of people, saying, hey, we're thinking about this thing. What do you think about it? There's this thing actually called the mom test. It's because if you ask your mom about your startup idea, she's always going to say, yeah, that's great. You should go do it. You're so smart. You know, so we're making sure you're not talking to biased sources, getting unbiased feedback about your idea. Most startups, when they fail because the co-founders fight. So being really thoughtful about who you're talking, like going to found the company with, and setting some guidelines. I have 2 other co-founders. Why do I have 2 other co-founders? Because we all really work well together and balance each other out. If it was just me and Lan, I think we would have broken up. Since it's me, Lan, and June, we have this nice like triangle that works really well, and we always have a tiebreaker vote. So those are 2 big things. Validate your idea and de-risk it by talking to people. Make sure you choose your co-founders right and have like practices for when you guys get into arguments, because that's going to happen inevitably. Ashika asked, how do you create a startup business plan? That's a good question. It depends on the startup, depends on how you want to make money. I think the most powerful thing about technology companies is that software doesn't cost more to per unit to sell generally, which is really awesome, right? It's why startup companies are valued so much, because they create something that essentially can be given away for practically free or sold for practically free and make a great profit. So this idea of like, how do you make a startup business plan? Look at how other startups are making business plans. What are the business models of startups? Are they SaaS? Are they subscription software as a service where you're paying money each month for some software? Are they transactional? Are they like Uber where you're paying to use a service, and every time you use the service, you pay a little fee? There's a lot of business models out there. You don't have to innovate very often. Someone has probably found something for us. We have a take rate of revenue earned on our platform. That's our business plan. What traits do I look for from Frank in the hiring process? I really like looking at people. First of all, I generally don't look at what school you went to, or even if you went to school. I felt like that was always the most frustrating thing for me when I was applying for jobs, was that my school's name wasn't on the drop-down list. That was like the biggest like L. It was like Harvard, whatever, and nothing wrong with the schools. They're really great institutions. I know some really cool people from there, but I was like, man, it just feels weird that there's a drop-down list for schools. So I don't look at schools generally. I just look at the things you've done. And this is maybe kind of contrarian, but I really love it when people like put an effort on writing a cover letter or an email. Like at Twilio, when I used to be in the interview loop, we get a lot of resumes just kind of thrown at us, which is great. You could kind of look at it, you can see, oh, they have this really interesting experience. They interned here, they built this side project that's really cool. Those are big things. Where'd you work? What did you do? Or what side projects have you done? But then the people who went above and beyond would always kind of write a little note in the cover letter section, or maybe if they emailed me directly, they'd email me and say, hey, here's why I want to work on the identity team at Twilio. This thing is super important to me. I think you can do this differently. And they like took the effort to show me and teach me something, and show me why they care. I think nobody wants to be the recipient of like a resume that was just kind of shot to 100 companies. So that personalization, that is higher touch. So really do it authentically if you're trying to get a job. If you actually want to work somewhere, putting that extra touch in of like a cover letter where you very clearly explain why you care. People notice that because cover letters are rare. And yeah, I think just putting the extra effort there. It's a good idea to create a startup with friends. How likely is this to break friendship and create financial controversies? I've started a startup with a friend and it didn't go really well, and we weren't friends for a while, and then we became friends again. So the strongest friendships kind of last, hopefully. I think it's fine to create a startup with your friends. I say I'm best friends with my co-founders. They're people that I FaceTime every single day. So it maybe trying to find the right people to start the company with is a better question. Like, just because you're your friends doesn't mean that you're your business partners, but sometimes the best business partners you can find happen to be your friends. So it's kind of going from where's the best business partner? Oh, these are my friends. I'm playing into a pitch competition. I'm trying to figure out how to make my app profitable for the competition. Certainly look at, apps exist in the similar space. Maybe they're similar, maybe they do something similar, and see how they're making money and kind of extract that. You can kind of copy. I think there's no shame in copying things. Let's be co-founders. Yes, SF Hacks team needs to found a company together. That'd be great. Yeah, we got a lot of good questions, and I know I talk fast, so I appreciate you all staying with me. Any other questions that come to mind? If you don't want to type, you can also unmute. I think there's few enough people in here that it's not going to be too crazy.
This is a weird question, but your webcam has really nice quality. What webcam do you use?
That's a great question, and I have to have a good webcam because I run a live streaming company, right? It's a Logitech something. I've had it for like 5 years, and I don't have one of those DSLR setups, but I don't know what it is. I'll put it in the Discord after this call, but it's a Logitech something. It's not.
I'm gonna buy
it.
New,
though. Yeah, you should buy it.
Me and Naya and Leisha have been asking about it ever since we met the first time.
It's definitely like, and we have this in our user onboarding, since we are a live streaming company. We definitely talk about like what's important for good live streaming. It's like a webcam that's not your built-in one, good lighting, and that's pretty, and like sitting an appropriate distance away. Some people are like the angle really matters. So just go buy a webcam on Amazon if you can.
We're all adjusting our angles now. We're like, oh wait.
You're like, how's my lighting actually? Yeah, I don't have a ring light though. That would be next level.
Leisha does.
Leisha does.
There you go. That's a president kind of move.
Anyway, we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah. I see another question just popped in, so I answer. What country or city would you recommend to go study CS in university? Totally depends on your immigration status and where you can go to school. I think SF is still the best city in the world, and I love it here. And I don't think, even though the world is going remote and virtual, I do think there's still a lot of opportunity. And I'll be walking down the street, and I live by Dolores Park in San Francisco. And I was walking to get some coffee, and someone was like, yeah, and we got to acquire more users faster, otherwise we're not going to scale. And I was like, oh, cool. This is just random stuff you hear on the street in San Francisco as people starting about technology companies. And this happens all the time. So I think that's rare that happens. I think it's going to be hard for it to break up. Also, it's good weather. Outside of San Francisco, I'm really excited about some of the stuff that's happening in Asia. I really think that there can be some really cool companies coming out of New York as well in the United States. And it's really, since the world is remote, you have a lot more opportunities to kind of do things. I think SF, you can kind of just run into it, which is nice. You just bounce around and accidentally stumble into, startup conversation. Any good companies having a small team for applying remote internships to? I think what you're trying to ask, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is are there any good companies that have small teams that do remote internships? I don't know off the top of my head. I think there's a lot of open source projects that are in desperate need of like people to contribute to them. So definitely go on GitHub. There's a lot of really cool repositories that have like contributing guides, and you don't have to apply to contribute. You just have to write code that is valuable to them. So there you go. Free internship, basically. Go on GitHub and start opening up pull requests and helping people build better open source code. They won't say no to you there. Cool. I know it's 10:30, and I did say I have to kind of hop off around 10:30. Are there any last questions? Hey, Andrew Patterson, that's my old roommate. Are there any last questions from anyone at all?
And if you don't have any right now, that's okay, because Paul has his own Discord channel on our server.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely go and find the category called workshops-keynote, or KS for Keynote. speakers and go and message him and tag him. I'm sure.
Oh,
he'll-
and also, Alicia, I know you like to take screenshots of people at the very end, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to do that.
Kevin, we should really start a company, you know, because that was a great reminder. So we take screenshots after every workshop and keynote, and basically anything else in the hackathon just as memories, just for memory. So if you're willing to turn on your camera, definitely turn it on and say hi to everyone. And if not, no worries, definitely not a requirement. But I'll give everyone a second if they're interested.
I love this. This is cool. I hope I get a copy. Also, where do I get my T-shirt? I want it. Do I missed
The attendance.
the attendance. I didn't put my name in the attendance yet.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Oh no.
the founder doesn't get one.
Damn.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, cheese. Amazing. Okay. Okay, there's another question, Paul. So if you just want to address that.
Yeah. I
If
see.
anything, that can be also in the Discord channel, whichever is more
Yeah,
comfortable.
I see a bunch of little last minute questions pop in. I do have to hop off pretty soon though. So these questions specifically about how to contact me, Discord channel, how to differentiate your startup from big companies. Let's talk about that more on the Discord channel. Maybe I can give you more tailored advice. And same thing, if you want to run your business plan by me, just put in Discord. We can do all that together and I can give more specific advice. That might be the most helpful thing.
Discord.
Okay, everybody?
Sweet. Yes. Okay. Let's all say thank you to Paul. Thank you so much for coming back, supporting this community. You founded this community at our school, so it's really nice to have you. And
Thanks,
thank you.
Queen.
Thanks everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you
Okay.
so much. On